Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Off-Farm Income Podcast. Hey, thank you so much for joining us here on our YouTube channel for episode number 991. Well, you can see it above my head. Today, we are heading back to my adopted home state of Montana, and we are going to the tippy top, most northeast corner, the harshest winter conditions they've got in that state. We are going to Opheim, Montana, and speaking with a very impressive young man. Cole Taylor is coming on the show. He's going to be talking to us all about actually moving from Oklahoma to this remote part of Montana in the 6th grade, how he's adjusted to being in a school, a school district where there's 15 kids total for both junior high and high school, and how this all transitioned into him being the president of his FFA chapter and starting a really cool Honeybee supervised agricultural experience. Also, where he is going after high school is very exciting. I'll give you a hint. He has got a sense of duty and a sense of service, and he's got a family history of it as well. Very excited to profile Cole for you, and we're going to get that started for you right now. Cole, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on today.
My pleasure.
Hey, it is a thrill to speak with another Montanan. Montana is like my adopted home state. I don't live there anymore, but I went to college there and absolutely love Big Sky Country. So thrilled to speak with you.
I'm glad to be here. Go MSU.
I like it. Thank you. Let's learn a little bit about you. And I already know a little bit, but I want to get into this because it's a lot of fun. So tell us about where you live. What part of Montana are you in?
I live in Opheim, Montana, which is a very, very small town in the northeast corner. And we've got about 100 people in the town. My school is very small. There's like 15 kids in the junior high through the high school. So we're very small.
Wow. 15 kids making up the total junior high and high school.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of people in this world who would hear that and they would go, ooh. But I'm telling you right now, this audience right now is going, oh, that sounds like paradise. That is awesome. My 8th grade graduating class was 13 kids, but we did not have the high school combined. Your entire population of the entire school, 15. Wow. Okay. So I wanted to bring that up because we had just talked about that off the air, but it's so fun for me to hear from about where you're from. Because when I sit there and say Montana is my adopted state, I love Montana, blah, 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 everybody pictures Bozeman, they picture Kalispell, they picture, the Rocky Mountains and stuff like that. You're darn near in Canada and you're darn near in North Dakota. They don't picture that when people talk about how much they love Montana, or at least not as much, right?
Yeah, no, we are definitely the kind of the forgotten corner of Montana. We don't have the mountains. We're mostly plains, but there is some hidden beauty to it.
Yeah, I think so. So this may surprise you, but I've spent some time in your region. So I spent a Thanksgiving back in the 90s. Matter of fact, you probably were not born yet, in Wolf Point, which is going to be relatively close to where you're at. And then one of my college roommates at Montana State was from Scobie, which has got to be even closer, I would think.
Yeah, we actually, so since we're so small, we don't have our own sports team, so we actually co-op with them. So I'm currently playing basketball with a lot of their kids right now.
Oh, okay. So you're playing basketball with Scobie kids.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, very cool. Oh, see, it's a small world, right? Who knew?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is awesome. Good for you. Well, I'm assuming that it's cold where you're at.
Very, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. That wind comes in and that those northern air masses, those Alaskan air masses, and whew, it gets cold where you are at. Unbelievable. Okay, so do you live out on a farm? Do you live in town? Tell us about kind of your living situation.
So my family doesn't have an agricultural background, but we live on an old farmhouse in an old homestead, and we have some animals, but that's partially why I got into beekeeping, was because I don't have a lot of land.
Okay.
So I'm out in the country, yeah.
Okay. So without that agricultural background, what brings you and your family to Opheim, Montana?
Well, my father was in the military. He retired and we were in Oklahoma, but we had family up here. So we ended up coming up here to help around with the farm and the ranch, and we ended up staying.
Okay. So how long have you been there then?
We moved here my 6th grade year, So I've been here for 6 years, I think.
For six
Six.
years. Okay, we've got to explore this a little bit. This is fascinating. So, where did you live in Oklahoma before you moved to Opheim?
So my father was stationed in Fort Sill. So we lived near Lawton, but I went to school in a school called Central High.
Okay. And so, how many students were there at that school?
Oh, it was a much bigger school. I can't remember the exact number, but it was probably about Scobie size. It was
Okay.
much.
Okay. And so, a much bigger town as
Mhm.
well. And so, what was it like for you to move from Oklahoma, which has its share of cold temperatures, but they come and they go throughout the winter, and that season is much shorter, to almost Canada, to Opine, Montana. What was that like for you? That move, that transition?
It was a bit of a shock. The first winter was cold. Uh, you learn quick to appreciate being warm in summer and coats and gloves. So you kind of adapt and your body gets used to it, I guess.
Okay. And when you're moving into a school district where junior high and high school combined have, well, I guess before you got there, 14 students, theoretically, what's it like to be the new kid?
It wasn't, it was a little bit, it was kind of tough because you have to learn a kind of a different social, it's a lot different than when you have a big school with a lot of kids
Uh-huh.
that's smaller. So you get a lot closer contact and you become closer to everybody. So it's definitely not a bad transition, but it was a transition. It was
Yeah.
certainly cool to do.
In the town I grew up in, like I said, we had 13 kids in my eighth grade class. And so really I always tell my daughter, she asks, if I had a lot of friends or whatever in town, if there were groups, if there were cliques, if there was stuff like this, I'm like, no, you couldn't. It was impossible. If you wanted to say that person over there doesn't fit in or something like that, literally you had no friends. So you took everybody as they were. Everybody fit in. We all had the little town we grew up in common, and it was a lot different than when I got to high school. I moved into a much bigger, well, a city, and went to high school in the city, one of four high schools in that city, and was completely overwhelmed. And there were a million different groups, which where I'd come from, there was nothing like that. So, but you kind of did it in reverse, although you didn't come from a huge city when you went to Opine.
Yeah, exactly. There's definitely no clicks or anything. You all kind of fit in
Okay.
pretty well.
So now, is everybody in your junior high and your high school in FFA? All 15 of you?
There are just about every one of us is, yeah. I think
Okay.
there's one or two that aren't.
Okay, one or two that are not. So now, why did you join the FFA? Why did you sign up for that?
Mostly because coming into high school, we have it to where you can join in seventh grade. Our ag advisor, Mr. Redfield, came up to me and said, "Hey, do you want to be in this?" I
Okay.
said, "Sure." Just gonna try everything once at least and do it. And I mean, Opheim High School, there's not a lot going on, and it's not very exciting, so I might as well.
Yeah, you're like, well, I don't know. It's the wind is blowing 40 miles an hour. It's 14 below zero without the wind chill, and the snow is drifting 6 foot deep. Sure. Yeah, I'll hang out. Yeah, it's warm in here. Okay. Yeah, very cool. Well, I mean, obviously, it's grown on you. You're now serving as your chapter's president, and that's awesome. That's a great accomplishment, and so you've taken a vested interest. I can tell.
Yeah, definitely. FFA is kind of it's like a home now. Been to all the different. I've been to the competitions, to the state competitions, and the conventions, the alumni leadership camp, and then the John Deere Ag Expo. Been to those kind of things, and it's just always super awesome to be and go and do those things.
That's great. Well, so what position are you playing on basketball?
I'm kind of the post, the big tall guy. I'm 6'4", so
Oh, are you kidding me? Wow. Okay, so you're the. I mean, the schools you're playing against. Is there anybody that can match your height?
yeah, they're actually on the team that I'm on. There's another few guys that are pretty tall, 6'4", 6'5". There's one more
Okay.
that tall, and then the rest are about 6 foot, 6'1".
Are you
But
guys
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, are you guys just dominating, or is that same with all the schools you're playing?
Scobie's got a very, very good basketball program, so we're doing pretty well.
Oh, that's awesome.
There are a few other taller kids in our district.
Okay. And how far do you have to travel for your games?
Games usually about, I'd say on average, from Scobie an hour, but we live 45 miles away from Scobie, so every day we make a 45-minute drive over to Scobie and back to practice.
Oh, wow. Wow. And then do you go all the way across the state to play games?
Not until the state tournaments and everything will pick up, but that's later in the year. So
Okay.
right now we just kind of keep it in the district.
Okay. All right. Now, living in such a remote area, such a small town, such a small school, did coronavirus have any impact on you there?
That is one of the big reasons, like, you really realize your blessings is whenever something like this happens, and
Uh-huh.
we're in the middle of nowhere. So, total case count has to be less than 10 that we've had. Um, and our school, we're so small, we can socially distance very easily. Um, we wear our masks and everything and do our part, but for the most part, we've been pretty much untouched.
Okay. Very
Yeah.
cool. All right. Well, you've mentioned your FFA advisor a couple times. Let's just do it formally really quick. We love to acknowledge our FFA advisors. Who is that for you?
Our advisors, Chase Redfield.
All right. Thank you very much for mentioning him. Let's talk about your supervised agricultural experience. I mean, we already know it's bees, but tell us when you've started it and what you've been doing.
Like I mentioned earlier, I didn't come from an agricultural background, so I didn't have a lot of land, and the traditional SAEs such as like cows and swine and sheep, all of the normal ones didn't quite fit my lifestyle. So I kind of had to brainstorm a little bit, and Mr. Redfield really helped me, and we came up with bees.
Hmm.
And I had no prior experience, and I just kind of jumped in, and it's brought me this far. And
Okay.
I started it back in 2019 with a bunch of planning.
Okay. So 2019. So when did you start it? Like in the spring of 2019 with a new hive or something like that?
So I actually and I applied for the Montana FFA Foundation, their grant,
Uh huh.
and I received it. So I received $1,000 to start off my project, and I did all the planning and bought all the stuff, built the hive, and then um, jumped into it and got the hive and started off.
That's awesome. Good for you. And so that's kind of taken off for you. Have you expanded your hives since the beginning?
So the next year I applied again and got the grant again, and I bought three more hives. So now I'm at four,
Okay.
and I recently received uh, a national FFA grant. So and I'm planning on using that to buy one more hive and then a bunch of what they're called the supers,
Uh huh.
so that it really help to maximize production.
Awesome. So you help them grow. Who sponsored the grants that you received?
Pioneer Seeds Pioneer Seeds AgriScience, I believe.
Awesome. I'm wearing a Pioneer Seeds hat as we're talking.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they supported that.
that's
So
great. That's wonderful. I'm very happy to hear that. I love it when a company I do business with, and when I interview somebody, they've benefited from what they're doing. It makes me feel really good about doing business with them. That's really cool.
yeah, it's always
Awesome.
great with sponsors.
Awesome, Cole. Thank you for mentioning that. Okay, so you started your hives, you've been growing it, you got another grant. Now, is this an entrepreneurship SAE? Are you selling honey or something like that?
Yeah, actually, this is the first year I've been able to produce honey, and I produced around 75 pounds, and I've sold all of it now. I sold out pretty quickly, and it's an entrepreneurship. So I, I mean, the gross income would be about $700, I want to say,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
which
very
is
cool.
decent for a growing business.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And do you label the honey Cole's Honeybees? Is that the name of the honey jars?
I actually decided to go with something. Cole's Honeybees is kind of like the main thing, but
Uh-huh.
the honey part of it, I went with Blue Sky Honey.
Oh, okay. That's a
Yeah, kind of.
that's a great name. How'd you come up with that?
A friend of mine actually really helped me out with it. I was just trying to come up with names. I was thinking of Wild Rose Honey because my address out in the country is Wild Rose Road, but
Okay.
That would kind of confuse the people about honey and everything. So my friend suggested blue sky honey, and that's what I went with.
That's awesome. That's great. So, had you ever worked with bees before you got this grant and started?
Never. No, I had no idea what I was getting into.
Okay. Was there any hesitation or fear of getting stung or anything like that?
Not I mean, the singing part, like I knew it was going to happen eventually. So
Yeah.
I kind of just, well, it's going to happen. Might as well not think about it. But there was a lot of hesitation and uncertainty because like it is something new. People are
Hmm.
nervous to do that. So it was really quite uh frightening to jump into it and do it, but it worked out, which is good.
That's awesome. Well, so is there a favorite part to it? I mean, for me, we've raised bees. For me, it's harvesting the honey. That's a fantastic day. But I mean, there's other parts to it. People really love being around the bees, watching them work, seeing, growing those hives and stuff like that. What part of this kind of stands out to you?
I've really enjoyed the whole process. I mean, but there are the best parts. Um, there are of course like the paperwork, filling out the reports, doing the journaling, the
Hmm.
financial stuff. But my favorite part has to be just out there working with the bees on a hot summer day, just out there with the smoker blazing and just watching them work, looking for the queen, checking the brood. It's really pretty pretty special, I think, and it's really a unique experience to be able to raise something that we don't really fully understand and that is
Hmm.
just that self-organized. I really, I really learned to admire the bees and how they work, and it's really, really cool.
Hmm. That's interesting. I think that's a sentiment that a lot of people that start off raising bees come to. They come to admire is a funny word, right? It's an insect, but there is something to admire there. It is an interesting thing, and I find it very very interesting that you chose that adjective, which I think is very appropriate. That's really cool. All right, so you're raising bees, you're selling honey, and you are a junior right now, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so you got another year of high school. So will you continue with this particular supervised agricultural experience next year? And if so, do you have plans to change it or grow it or anything like that?
I plan on continuing it as long as I can. I'll probably keep them forever, but or try to. But right now I'm looking to once I get that $1,000 from the
Hmm.
national grant, I will use that to buy my hive and expand it a little bit more. And then I'll just work on maximizing honey production and trying to really get some more of the profits going to kind of cover the costs that I put in. But uh, so yeah, I really look forward to continuing the project for a
That's
while.
great. That's awesome. Okay, so you've got a year left. Well, about a year and a half left of high school. And well, actually, before I get to that, one more question about the bees. You live in such a harsh winter environment. Is there any extra precautions you have to take? Anything special you have to do to make sure your hives live through the winter?
Yeah, there's certainly things that really help them. Right now, we've had a relatively warm winter this year, so they're not doing too bad. But what I usually do is I wrap the hives in blankets, old blankets, towels, or whatever, something that'll really insulate them, and then I stack hay around them
Okay.
and try to keep them a little bit warm and insulate because the real killer is the wind here.
Hmm.
It's just that cold and that strong. And I try to I try to kind of bend the hives because what happens is the condensation builds up in there, and
Mm.
once the bees get wet, then they really are in trouble. So where it drips out. And then what I like to do sometimes is a lot of bees die during the winter because of being wet and being cold. So they'll fall to the bottom and clog up the entrances. So I like to kind of clear that out and keep that airflow for them.
Okay.
Uh, but it's certainly a struggle for them to survive, and it's it's always kind of nerve wracking to open them up come spring.
Sure. That's interesting about angling the hive so the condensation will drip out. How severe of an angle do you need to place those on?
I usually do it with a block of wood about that big or so, about an inch or two.
Okay.
Um, it really it just really helps to keep
Sure.
them a little bit safer, I guess. I don't. Yeah.
Okay, very interesting. Have you been able to do any competitions, win any awards for your work and your supervised agricultural experience or anything like that yet?
I've received a little bit of recognition from, well, earning the grant itself, I kind of consider as a reward, which
Yeah.
is pretty cool. But then I was on the radio, our local radio station, did some interview there. Uh, but I really am looking to start. Our chapter hasn't been big in the proficiency awards before, so
Mm-hmm.
that's something I'm really starting to want to push. Uh, but that's what I would hope to try to get into that more.
Very cool. Good for you. Okay, so a year and a half to go in high school. What is next for you after high school?
What I'm looking to do actually is apply to the United States Military Academy, West Point.
Okay, wow.
And that's what I would like to try to do. And my dad had a military background, and I
Uh-huh.
think it's something I would like to do. Um, but if that doesn't work out, then I'll go to college and probably still end up in the military.
Okay,
Uh,
wow. And West Point obviously is the Army, right?
yes.
Okay, and so, and I'm assuming that I mean you're obviously a well-spoken young man. You got a lot of really cool stuff going on. I'm assuming West Point's going to go just like you want it to go. If for some reason you went to college elsewhere, would the Army still be the branch that you would pursue?
Yes, I'd probably pursue an ROTC scholarship and try something like that.
Okay,
Um, but the Army is definitely where I'd like to end up.
okay. And obviously, you've got yourself appointed as an officer in the Army. Do you have a particular job or a particular task, skill, something like that appeals to you right now?
I'd really look forward to being in the infantry. Uh, I would like to end up in special forces as an officer, but that's like a big goal that I'd like to try to get, but we'll see where it goes.
Man, that is great. I am excited for you. That is really, really cool. And man, I love that heart of service that you have just running through your family. Obviously, with your dad in his military service, and then you're gonna follow in that path. I think it's great. It's wonderful that you feel that. I don't know. I feel compelled to serve like that.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's just got to do our part, I guess.
Well, Cole, I want to ask your advice, and let's give you the opportunity to talk to all those FFA students out there around the country who find themselves in really, really small schools, because there's quite a few actually around the country. How do you, I mean, being in such a small school with such a small population, how do you take advantage of opportunities or even get involved in opportunities that maybe larger chapters just, it comes easy to them?
Um, the biggest thing I would say is to try. I mean, we've we've went to competitions with only two of the four team members, and it's tough and it's hard to be a small chapter, but you certainly can find that drive to do, and you can really get other kids involved, and you can expand your chapter as much as you can, and more than anything, don't get discouraged. It's hard sometimes, but everything in life is hard. So just really push forward and keep going, and don't give up on FFA, because FFA can take you a very long way. And I've experienced a lot from it and learned a lot and grew a lot. Uh, so I would definitely encourage you, if you're in a small chapter out there, to just work your tail off and give it all you've got, because it'll pay off.
Yeah, that is great advice. Cole, it has been a pleasure to meet you, and I really enjoyed just kind of reminiscing about that part of Montana, but also getting to know you and everything you're doing. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you for being here, everybody, and thank you to Cole Taylor for coming on the Off Farm Income Podcast today. And hey, everybody, we would love it if you would click that subscribe button and become a subscriber right here on the Off Farm Income YouTube channel. And then, of course, we'd love to connect with you on social media as well. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And until next time, enjoy your journey to the ultimate lifestyle business, agriculture.